Mm.
So look, people are coming in. So I'm going to say good afternoon to Sister Stanislaus Kennedy. What do I say? Social innovator, author, visionary, and all-round really sort of iconic Irish person who has tried and has successfully tried to make this country a better place and our society a better place. And so thank you very much, Sister Stan, for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Not at all. It's an absolute pleasure. It's proven to be very popular. We're catching up with a lot of people. Not a lot of people, actually, but people that the main sheds want to talk to. And like you, they've been affected severely by this pandemic and all the things that go with it. The sheds have been closed, but a lot of men have been cocooning and isolating. How was the pandemic for you, if it's another strange question?
For me personally.
Yeah, for you personally, for starters, yeah.
Well, it has changed everything in the sense that not being able to be in touch with people and not being able to be involved with Focus Ireland or with Immigrant Council or any of them, except at kind of committee level or at Zoom level. So that's a big change, and it's something that I miss very much. Having said that, I suppose I'm very fortunate to be living in a little house that's very nice with another sister, and we have the garden, and we also are at the back. We have the sanctuary garden, which is very beautiful, and I'm living in the lodge, and it's the lodge of what used to be the convent, which is now the first social housing project of Focus Ireland. So there are 80 apartments in there for people who would otherwise be homeless. And then on the other side, there is a small hostel for young people who are at the risk of being homeless. So so those activities are going on beside me. So there's a lot of contact that way. But I'm really, I suppose, feel very blessed to have a house and to have a garden and to have enough to eat and to have great neighbors. So I suppose it has made me grateful for everything, for the things I might take for granted.
Yeah.
And when it comes to gratefulness, David Stanley Rast, who is a Benedictine who lives now in Arizona, he did live in California. He runs he is responsible for gratefulness.org, which is a website and which sends out thoughts each day on gratefulness. He says, he's now 95. He is extraordinary man. He says that there is a difference between gratitude and gratefulness. Gratitude is a feeling, it's conditional, and it passes. So we are in gratitude for something somebody did to us or gave us or whatever. But gratefulness, he says, is different. Gratefulness is a way of living. It's an attitude. It is taking nothing for granted, just being open to surprise all the time. So I think that's a long-winded answer to your question. I think what the pandemic has done for me is helped me to be more grateful, live a more grateful life.
Fantastic. Yeah, and that's a good thing to keep. I was going to put it as what would you keep and what would you change, but you keep the gratefulness, the stronger feeling of gratefulness, may I say, and I think that's echoed by us all. And what was, I suppose, the isolation was the bad part of it all.
Yes, the isolation was difficult. The first lockdown, where the over 70-year-olds couldn't even go for a walk, that was really hard. And then it happened again and again. But I think it's much more difficult for other people who have very little space and who are in crowded circumstances, or who may be even at the risk of being homeless, or may even be homeless. So it's much harder for them. I suppose, because of my way of life, have been used to being, at times, maybe a retreat and things like that, of being on my own and being silent. I have a certain amount of familiarity with that. So what I'm saying really, that it's been much harder on older people who maybe live on their own, or even older couples who wouldn't have the circumstances I have, and who wouldn't have the opportunity even to see people going by all the time from the focus folk.
Yes, no, absolutely. And the pandemic has been harder on both the socially deprived and also on women. I think it's fair to say, isn't it?
Oh yeah, most definitely it has been much harder. I mean, it is hard anyway, but for the socially deprived, they're deprived already, so they're doubly and trebly deprived. Homeless people whom Focus deals with, I mean, we simply had to change the way we work. I mean, for example, the coffee shop, which was a place that have been going to regularly, which is the place for provide food, and there's also information advice there. Now it is takeaway food. People still go there, but that is very different. And all our support services, which is offered to people who've been settled, maybe people housing first, and all our advice information has to be done by phone. So it is really difficult to do it, and it's really hard on people who are homeless or at risk of being homeless also to be able to manage with that. So it is, yeah, it's hard. Having said that, one of the things that did happen during the pandemic was that the statutory body of state, like the local authorities, they engaged much more with the voluntary sector. So you had a coalescing of services that we hadn't seen before, and that made a huge difference. They also provided accommodation. For example, they took over part hotels, they took over Airbnbs and housed people who were homeless. So, and we are involved in one of those projects in the South Central Road, and that has been fantastic because it has been an opportunity for people who would otherwise be out to have a place, and a nice place, in their own apartment, living. So good things have happened. Also, there was a cap put on the rents and the mortgages as well. So that made a difference as well.
Yeah. So I suppose, yeah, I mean, what did we learn as a society about ourselves is a question.
I know, it's hard to know. I mean, you would love to think that it helped us all to stop and to appreciate the simple things, the ordinary things. And people will say that, that they've begun to appreciate nature, they've begun to appreciate walking, they've begun to appreciate the ordinary things. But will it continue when this is all over? I would like to think that it will, that we will have changed, that it will have in some way transformed us. I think it's really very sad if it didn't do that.
I think you're right. I think we, on a personal level and amongst so many people, we have found a new discovery of gratefulness, of appreciation for simpler things, of slowing down, apart from the harsh isolation, which has been very tough on people.
Yeah.
And do you think official Ireland will learn? Do you think these innovations that are this coming together or joining up the dots we've seen, do you think that'll last? Do you think?
Well, I hope so. And I suppose one of the things I have been saying, that if we can do it now, we can do it in the future. There's no reason. What it requires is the will, and particularly the political will to make it happen. And one would hope that we would do that. And I would also, and I've said it many times, that I hope that homelessness will not be the new normal as we move forward. That we will, in fact, have a strong campaign at the moment to end homelessness, to end long-term homelessness. So we got thousands of signatures and we handed them into the government. And it is really asking that there would be a strategy to end long-term homelessness. There will always be people who will come into homelessness short-term, But long time, I remember way back in 1987, just 2 years after I set up Focus Ireland, there was an international conference because it was the International Year for Homelessness. And I spoke at it, and I remember saying that if we decided that within the following 5 or 6 years, we could have ended long-term homelessness. And at that time, long-term homeless people were in hostels. They were mostly men. And we could have done it, except that the government stopped providing housing.
Yeah.
Successive governments failed to provide housing for the public. And so the number of people with homeless increased. They were longer homeless, and so with all that, you have other problems. So now it reached this stage now when we have over 8,000 people who are homeless in Ireland, and something like 2,166 of those are children. So that has been, over the years, that has happened. There wasn't anything like that in 1987 when I said we could eliminate long-term homelessness.
Yeah.
They reneged on their commitment to provide housing.
They really have, and COVID has since been replaced in the top story by homelessness. So nothing has changed, and that must be frustrating from your point of view, from everyone's point of view, because I don't think the average person in the street wants to live in a society where we're nearly 9,000 people are homeless and over a quarter of them are children. They don't.
And I know from people who write to me, and I would get many letters for people who want to support, want to help in different ways. But you also want to see things change. They don't want to be part of a country that has so many homeless people. They don't want that to be part of a society with such a situation. So it's very clear. It's very clear that the public want change.
Yeah, absolutely, and it seems to be a failure of politicians to almost understand the problem. Like, yes. We had the cuckoo funds snapping up houses in minutes, and it was like, this is the first time it's ever happened. We seem to be, but focus has been, you're over 30 years running now.
That's right, and we have said consistently about the vulture funds buying up property and evicting people, and then raising the rents. We have said that consistently. Now, it was on a smaller scale than what is now, but it was going on for a number of years.
Is it sometimes a failure of official Ireland, of the government and the structures, the civil service, and all that, to just join up the dots, because everyone's had the experience where you go into one hatch and you're trying to solve a problem and you reach a point where the person says, that's no longer my problem now, you have to go somewhere else. Yeah, homelessness seems just such a core subject that surely that's something we could solve together, but they don't seem to be able. Is that the problem? Is that part of the problem? Is it?
It's part of the problem. It's part of the problem that government departments don't join up with each other to sort something. I mean, for example, with something like homelessness, you do need different departments to work together. You do. And if they don't, you have this fragmentation. And that absolutely could be different. But one of the problems is the way our society is structured. We have politicians that are elected for a certain length of time, and they want to do their job within their department. And I remember once, way back, talking to a minister of the responsibility for housing and telling them what I thought was needed. And they said to me, look, Stan, I have just another 2 years. And what I'm going to do in that time, this is what I'm going to do. I can't think any broader than that. And that is exactly the problem. If you have statesmen or women, they take overall responsibility. But where you have the political system where people are only elected and are all the time covering their back, looking forward to the next election, it doesn't work. There needs to be much more cooperation, and even a deeper thing than cooperation, a coalescing of departments. That is really, it's one of the problems.
Yeah, my own wife says to me that the other problem is we don't have enough female politicians.
That's for sure. That's for sure. I mean, it is. I heard Simon Coveney saying last night about the army and the woman being appointed to a senior position, and he said there are situations where we need a woman to carry out the peacemaking process, and it is true that we also need women, more women, who think more about homes and homelessness, maybe than men do. But there's no doubt about that. Yeah.
Well, Philip Gargan, who's hopefully viewing today, he offered, and he just simply asked the question, well, if there's any way, how can sheds help? And I think that's a sentiment that's echoed across the organisation and the movement to Men's Sheds. And I know that they do help an awful lot on a local basis. And look, that offer is always there if you want to pass it on to your people. If there's a particular project that needs, whether it's a lick of paint or something, or if it's a case of, you know, helping with fundraising, we can join up there, because I think there is there's a great sense amongst the men. That's why they get together. They get into sheds, and that's good for them, but they look to help society too. So I just want to reiterate, thanks Philip for that offer.
Yeah, thanks. That's great to hear. It's great to hear. I think the Men's Shed movement is fantastic. I think it's really fantastic the way it has grown and developed. It really is great. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and we've gotten to a point now where there's more men in sheds per capita in Ireland than anywhere else in the world, which I think speaks to the need more than anything else.
Yeah.
And it is a case that some sheds and some more than others will come in contact with homelessness, and be it from members or be it from being able to help out. And so I think there is definitely there's a great feeling of wanting to help there.
Yes. That's great. And you have a structure whereby Men's Shed, you have an overall, what am I trying to say? That the sheds are coordinated, are they?
As much as they can. I mean, each it's a very federal system. Each shed runs its own shed, and and they're wildly independent from county to county, from town to town. But we, as the association, try and put a sort of help manage the movement and help other sheds. We're like the honeybees, and I'm sure you can relate to that.
Yes.
We'll try and share resources and try and collect resources at a national level and share them out as well. And that's something we've learned through the pandemic that's needed as well. So it's been good.
Yeah, that's great. Great to hear.
It's one thing that actually, if I may, I know you're a huge advocate of meditation and mindfulness. And one of the things we did with the association, we had a mindfulness class every Tuesday, and we really didn't know how it was going to go. But it has taken off. There's a fantastic lady does it, Mary Lovegrove, and she gave this class every Tuesday. And it turned into such a community. But you're a great advocate of meditation and mindfulness and the still mind, if I can say that.
Yeah. Yeah, I am. And I mean, that goes way back to my early days working in Focus. And I suppose we were very, very busy, and I was really conscious of the people working with me, a lot of them young people, whether they were staff or volunteers, but that it was very demanding and very little funding and all that. And I had this kind of a dream. Wouldn't it be great to have a place in the city where you could open a door and go into a place that was beautiful and that was silent and still?
Oh, you're gone. I know she's there a second. Apologies for this. We've had a connection error.
Okay.
Yeah, you're back.
Sorry about that. The battery went down.
Oh, no problem. No problem at all.
Sorry.
You can't rely on them. Yeah, you're very good.
I was telling you about
you were.
I had this kind of a
meditation.
dream. Wouldn't it be great to have a place in the city where you could open the door and going to some place that was beautiful and still and silent, a place that would revive you and resuscitate you. And I went looking for a site, and finally I found the site. I have my back to it here now at the window. I found this site. It was at the back. It was at the back of where I live, but the back of also a focus housing, and it belonged to the Sisters of Charity. So I went and asked them for the site, and at that stage they had given me the convent for Focus Island. They gave me a number of things, and they didn't know what I was talking about. So I went back 3 times, and I said, look, I want a place that I can turn into a beautiful place to be still. Anyway, they finally gave me half the site. So now this is where we built, and then I got volunteers. I got an architect, a builder, an engineer, and they designed it with me and Sheila, and it put together this beautiful building, beautiful rooms and beautiful gardens. We got a garden designer who gave his services, and the garden is 3 circles, and it's beautiful. But it was all done volunteer. And then I had to decide, well, what am I going to do in this place now? In the meantime, I was real busy downtown developing focus. And I thought meditation, because I said, what I want really is something that will speak to the stillness in all of us, and something that will speak to the beauty within all of us. And in that way, help us to resuscitate ourselves, help us to revive, to rejuvenate ourselves. And that's what it became, the sanctuary, a place where people can come and really experience meditation and mindfulness. And we've run many courses and many programs. Now, since the pandemic, everything is done online, but we have developed a lot of programs and courses. And we talked briefly earlier about the fact that we do have online free courses on a Monday morning at 10 o'clock. There's one for half an hour, Wednesday evening at 7:30, and on Thursday afternoon at 1:15. And they're available to anyone who wants to link in to the sanctuary. So that's the story. I suppose how I discovered the importance of that. I discovered I needed it myself, and then I went to look, and I way back in early 90s, I had a sabbatical, and I went to Berkeley, California. So I learned a lot there about meditation and the creative arts and creation-centered spirituality. I learned a lot there that helped me to develop the sanctuary. So that's the story. But briefly, it is, I think that the meditation and mindfulness, they're a very important way of helping us to be present. I know mindfulness tends to be used in a whole lot of different ways, and people say, that's only, we're sick of this mindfulness thing. The thing about, if we practice meditation, if we simply took 3 deep breaths a number of times, say 5 times a day, that would transform our lives, because we'd be stopping, we'd be present to ourselves, and out of that presence to ourselves, when we come out of it, we'll be more present to other people. So meditation has the capacity to transform us and give us a really inner peace as well.
Yeah, well, that's so true and fantastic. And just to mention a book you've written, Gardening the Soul, which is and the Sacred Life of Everything. And if anyone is also interested, there's The Road Home, My Journey, which is a fantastic story, which takes you from 1939, Dingle Peninsula, near Lispole, if I'm correct.
That's right. Yeah.
And is it true, any truth in the rumour, you went to school with me, Hollimer Hertig?
You know, he's older than me.
Oh,
he's 90 something.
Oh,
he's
93. Okay. Oh, he was.
I think he's 10 years older than me. But I knew him, and I knew his family. They lived quite close to us. But Michal went away to school because he trained as a teacher, and he went to the teacher training. So he actually had gone to that by the time I went to school. But we knew him, and we knew his parents, and we, because we met them, and I still know him. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
And what is that magic ingredient that makes Kerry produce all these wonderful people?
Deprivation, I think.
Deprivation, very good. Yeah.
In our house, education was everything.
Yes.
If you don't be educated, you're going to be left here with nothing.
I think it is certainly, I mean, next to homelessness, it is as important a right and a resource to give everybody and give them access to.
Yeah.
Sister Stan, it's been an absolute pleasure, but I want to ask you before we let you go, because I know you're very busy. What's your wish for the future of Irish society? Post-pandemic, homelessness hasn't gone away. What could you say that you'd wish for? Would you pray for us even there? But what would you say?
I suppose a more compassionate society, you know, that would absolutely want a more equal society, would absolutely want more justice and more care for the vulnerable, but compassionate in such a way that we wouldn't have thousands of people homeless, that we wouldn't have thousands of family carers who are trying to care for their parents or for their children without any support. That we wouldn't have travellers living in accommodation that's not suitable for them. That we wouldn't have families who are not getting the kind of support they need. And that we wouldn't have a situation where people couldn't get the education that they need. So it's a society that is more compassionate, that's more equal, that's more a community.
Yeah.
That's what I would dream about.
And what we can all aspire to. Sister Stan, I want to thank you very much for your time this afternoon. We really appreciate it. And well done on all your great achievements and your continued success with everything that you turn your mind to.
Thank you so much, and I'm delighted to speak to you. And the best of luck with the men's sheds. And I certainly would pass on that word to Focus. And I think it's a wonderful development. I think it's a wonderful innovation. And I know that women tend to chat more than men, and men would need it more maybe than women. But there's also a need for something like that for women. That is a bringing together of people where they can be themselves, be themselves. Yeah.
I think so. And between you and I, there's even some men's sheds that some of them don't operate without the help of a woman and women around the country, and some of them do. And I think for all the charging around equality, there's still an argument for everyone needs their own space amongst their own for a while. In order that we can be more compassionate and more understanding of others.
Yeah, it's great.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much. And I look forward to maybe seeing you on the street someday and saying thank you in person.
We'd love to. Thanks, Frank.
Take care. Thank you, Sister Stan.
God bless.
Bye.